Brad Wilson has built a notable 40-year career in law, government, and healthcare. In 1992, he became general counsel to Governor Hunt, influencing state policy and legislative initiatives for North Carolina. He later joined Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina, serving in senior executive roles for 22 years, including president and CEO from 2010 to 2017. He has also contributed as a board member across public, private, and charitable organizations. He is recognized for his wisdom and authenticity. His journey will inspire you.
Hi, I'm Brad Wilson, CEO Emeritus of Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Could you please discuss what it was like growing up in North Carolina?
Well, I'm proud to be a native North Carolinian, raised and educated in North Carolina. When I was born, we lived in Watauga County in Boone. My mother was originally from Ashe County, just north of Boone, and they met while she was a nurse at the hospital, and my father actually was working for the funeral home in Boone, and that's when the funeral homes ran the ambulance service. So he was in and out of the hospital a lot, and they met. And so in 1953, I showed up while he was in Highway Patrol School. When he graduated from Highway Patrol School, becoming a state trooper, we then moved from Boone. I was just a baby. I did not grow up there. But it began a journey of where between birth and graduation from high school at Millbrook High School here in Raleigh, we moved 7 times. So I moved from one end of the state to the other in that part of my life, which we moved to Raleigh when I was in the 8th grade. We've lived from the mountains to the coast and then finally settled in Raleigh when he got a promotion in 1966. I was a first-generation college student. My sister and I were the fortunate beneficiaries of a stable, loving home where we were taught right and wrong. If the church doors were open, we were there. And yes, they stressed, they both were high school graduates, and they knew the importance of education, and it was paramount. And there was no question but what I was going to go to college. It wasn't a debate point with my parents. It was like, when you go to college, you know, this is what you need to think about or whatever. So they were very nurturing and encouraging in every aspect of our life. I mean, we didn't get everything we wanted, trust me. But we had everything we needed. I could tell that there were times during their journey, raising their family, that there were some better times than others. That was invisible to us. It was very stable and steady, and what a wonderful gift that is.
Brad, could you please discuss your educational journey?
I had always aspired, I wanted to go to Duke, so I applied to Duke and to Appalachian. Fortunate enough to be admitted to both, but even in 1971, Duke was expensive. My plan was I'm going to go to Appalachian for a couple years and then transfer back to Duke. That would shorten the length of time. So I knew that as I moved from high school to college, I was going to need to become a more serious student. I was a good student, but I was not at the top of the class. I was engaged in lots of extracurricular activities. I happened to be president of the student body. I played football, and that was really where a lot of my energy went. I got to Appalachian and fell in love with Appalachian. Of course, remember where I was born. I was very familiar with the territory because Appalachian's in Boone. And so for me, I wasn't going anywhere to, kind of unfamiliar surroundings or circumstances. But I was going to college, of course. Also met my wife there, so fell in love with Carol during that experience, so that kind of kept me in place. And I recognized very quickly I was at home and in a place where I could get to law school just as well, save a lot of money, get a good high-quality education, and so I stayed at Appalachian. Never regretted the decision. Now, I will say that later, I did end up getting a master's at Duke later in life, and then, of course, I went to Wake Forest Law School, where I got my law degree right after undergraduate school.
Who would you consider to be your mentors throughout your life?
I've looked to three men that really had the most influence, I think, over the trajectory of my life. First was my dad, for sure. He was a great teacher. For those that are familiar with the Andy Griffith Show, he was a lot like Sheriff Taylor. Very clear sense of right and wrong, commitment to public service, do what you can in your community, charitable spirit. If the church doors were open, we were there. So a spiritual grounding, if you will, and a lot of that came from him and just watching him live his life. He was always a mentor and a go-to person. And of course, he had the privilege of giving me advice even when I didn't think I needed it or wanted it. The second person would be actually my high school football coach. I played football from the time I was in the second grade till I graduated from high school. I had a lot of good coaches along the way, but because of my love for the sport and wanting to excel, of course you gravitated to your mentor, your coach, your leader. And Coach Bill Shirley, who was my football coach the last 2 years at Millbrook, taught me a lot of things: discipline, hard work. He ran our football program like a college program. The metaphor that I would use, he taught me that I could play above my weight class. If you develop the right physical and mental discipline and attitude, you could be better than you think you are. I've never forgotten that. He had a phrase, many people have heard it or seen it, that was at the top of every week's preparation document that we would go through as we got prepared for the next opponent. And at the top, it said, "Luck is when preparation meets opportunity." I've always said about myself, I've been more lucky than good, and I believe that. But you put it in the context of that quote, it gives it more meaning and texture. And then last but certainly not least is Governor Jim Hunt of North Carolina, who recently died just at the end of last year. He gave me opportunities that I could never dream of having, opportunities to serve and engage in a job that I dearly, dearly loved. But more important than that is through the way he conducted himself personally, professionally, and as a career public servant, and being able to watch him work, to listen to what he had to say, to be the beneficiary of his one-on-one coaching, taught me a lot in a very, very multi-dimensional way. So there would be the three primary individuals. I've been the beneficiary of lots of great friends and teachers along the way, and in elementary school and high school and college, and family support, and my children too today. It's an evolution. You find inspiration and leadership models and mentors all along your journey if you'll look for them and give them the opportunity to influence you in a positive way.
What do you think is the role of a mentor?
Watch and listen. People will send a message that I'm here to help you. And so you have to have the courage, because sometimes it's scary, depending on the power relationship there, to go to someone and say, I have a problem, can you help me? Most people will immediately respond in a positive way. I used to tell colleagues at Blue Cross Blue Shield regularly when we're having conversations like this, I find it a demonstration of strength and character when someone comes to me and says, I'm struggling. I'm having a problem here with the assignment that you've given me, whatever it might be, and say, I need help. That is not, you don't get demerits for that, in my view. You should be given points, if we're keeping score, for being able to recognize that. So finding the opportunities to raise your hand and say, can you help me? I need a little advice. Whether you're 9 or 90 is what you got to do. We're all human, we're all individual, we have a skill set. It's not unlimited. We don't have superpowers. You do the best you can with what you got. I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to walk with you through the journey, ever how long that journey may be, so that together you will get to the right place, whether I'm in the picture or not, and I will learn from you. I mean, problem solving is a learning experience. And I think we have to be careful sometimes that the best way to solve a problem for individuals is not necessarily stepping in and doing it and solving it. It is giving them guidance and advice and tools that they can use to do it themselves. I mean, it's the old adage of you're better off teaching someone how to fish than giving them fish. Helping them solve their own challenge or meeting their own opportunity themselves is more of an everlasting model, I think. And recognizing that as a mentor is important, because you can be solving problems, but then when you're no longer in the picture, are they equipped to take what they've learned from you and solve it themselves? Or in turn be a mentor to someone else? I mean, that's the way I look at it.
Why did you decide to pursue law?
As early as the third grade, I was a good reader. Let's start there. Importance of education. If you can read, you can do anything. So I was a good reader, and I read a lot, and I read a lot of history. And in the context of reading a lot of history, it was a lot of biography. In the third grade, I recognized that a lot of the biographies that I was reading of people that did amazing things, that many of them were lawyers. Now, did I decide I was going to be a lawyer in the third grade? No, I was going to be a professional football player. And I had lots of other aspirations along the way, but it was always there, et cetera, et cetera. So eventually, somewhere in the middle school range, I locked in that I thought I wanted to go to law school. But to wrap up on your question, when and how did you decide and why did you decide to be a lawyer? It was the recognition that that profession certainly had lots of members of people who knew how to engage in public service, solve problems, big and small. You could make a good living pursuing and being a part of that profession, and it it matched with my apparent skills and abilities. So I could do it. I'm not a mathematician. I was not going to be a chemist. And so not knowing what you shouldn't be doing is just as important as knowing what you should be doing.
Please tell us about your experiences in law school.
The legal education equipped me to do so many things. So look where I finished my career. I wasn't practicing. I did practice law, but I was not practicing law. But every day, every opportunity that I had, whether right out of law school I practiced law as people would think and know it in a small firm in Lenore, North Carolina for 14 years, where I did all kinds of things. Because I was a lawyer, it put me in a position that I could be asked by Governor Jim Hunt in 1992 to be his legal counsel. But the skills and the legal training of intellectual discipline, understanding complex fact situations and being able to figure out a solution, whether it was a legal solution or not, it was the same set of muscles, that you were exercising. And every day that I was at Blue Cross, I was there for 22 years. So 14 practice law, 4 in government service, and then 22 years at Blue Cross, where I had 4 distinct roles. The last one happened to be president and CEO for the last 8 years I was there. Every day, somehow, some way, I used either the substantive knowledge that I gained in law school or practical knowledge of problem solving, critical thinking, communication, and those skills were used. To those who might hear this that are thinking about pursuing a legal journey or a law school education, I encourage you to think about it in a multidimensional way, about how you will use that broad-based training and skill set that you will be taught and you will strengthen. How is it that you want to deploy that when you get out of law school? There are lots and lots and lots of other ways that you can deploy your legal education in other endeavors. So just think about it and then do what makes your heart sing.
How did your professional career start?
I graduated from law school a long time ago, 1978. So the practice of law and the manner in which you arrive, there's been lots of changes. Of course, just think about all the technology. I mean, nobody had a cell phone or internet or anything like that. There's a big bulletin board inside the law school making announcements from law firms everywhere that they're looking for talent. You go to the placement office, you sign up for an appointment, you sit down and have an interview, you give them your resume, and the process goes from there. That's exactly what I did. There was a notice that a small firm in Lenore, North Carolina was looking for a new associate, and Carol and I were married by then. We got married after my first year in law school. So we were more interested in going to a smaller or to medium-sized town in North Carolina where I would have the opportunity right out of the gate to practice law and do everything. I wouldn't be in the library writing briefs for someone else, that sort of thing. I just kind of wanted to jump into the deep end of the pool. And we wanted to live somewhere geographically distinct. We wanted to live in the mountains because we both went to Appalachian, so we were attracted to that region, or we wanted to live on the coast. So I was looking for opportunities kind of within that framework, and the one in Lenore popped up. I also had a conversation with a firm in Boone. We chose to go to Lenore, and I was the third of three lawyers, and sure enough, got to do anything and everything right out of the gate. Had two great mentors there, Walter Carpenter and John Bost, who taught me a lot about how to be a lawyer. And we had a wonderful experience there with many great friends over 14 years until I was given the opportunity to leave and come to Raleigh and be Governor Hunt's general counsel.
How did you get into public service?
I have always been interested and, depending on my station in life, if you will, active in North Carolina politics. That goes all the way back to, in fact, my first elected office was in elementary school. So I was in the first generation to vote as an 18-year-old. That would have been the election of 1972, so they lowered the voting age. And in high school, I would just volunteer for a campaign. Being in Raleigh, that was relatively easy. I mean, what can you do in high school? You do whatever you're told. But you could always kind of hang around and be around a campaign. And you could, everybody who ran for governor had a campaign office in Raleigh downtown. So they were always looking for free help. So I had kind of that, I guess it was something in my DNA that I wanted to be in that realm. Jim Hunt ran for lieutenant governor in 1972. That's how I connected. But I volunteered for the Jim Hunt campaign. Then he ran for governor in 76. I was in law school then, volunteered for the campaign, go to events. I was active in the Young Democrats of North Carolina at that time. And then I graduated from law school in 78, and he was successful in leading the constitutional amendment so that governors of North Carolina could succeed themselves. The Constitution was amended during his first term, 76 to 80, to permit governors to be reelected. So he ran for reelection in 1980. I was a practicing attorney then. and I was fully engaged in helping his reelection effort in my part of the state. Remember, I'm in the northwest part of North Carolina then. So he was successful at that. And I was growing up. I was actively engaged enough that in 1982, he appointed me to the North Carolina Board of Transportation, which is, it still is, one of the plum opportunities for public service in the state. I was only 28 years old. In fact, I was told at the time I was the youngest person ever appointed to a seat on the Board of Transportation. That's where I really began to interact with him and an amazing group of people that were around that board. That was a whole nother education and relationship building experience. So from that point, Governor Hunt knew who I was, and we had the relationship that began to build over time. And the Friday after the election of 1992, I'm sitting in my law office in Lenore, North Carolina, and the phone rings, and it's Governor Hunt, and he said, Carol and I are headed to the beach for a long weekend to recover from the campaign. I want you to meet me in Raleigh on Monday, and I want to have a conversation with you about joining the administration. All of that political activity, I was not doing it to get a job. But that whole, and there are many other ways to do it. You can do it through politics. That's just one way. All of that activity, I learned so many things. I met so many wonderful people. I had opportunities to serve. And I enjoyed every minute of it. And it yielded an opportunity. Call it divine intervention. Call it luck. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And I said yes, and the family moved to Raleigh, and I'm confident that because I had that opportunity to serve the governor, it gave me the opportunity to apply for and be offered the position as General Counsel at Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina.
How did you begin working with Blue Cross and Blue Shield?
That I not only served as governor's legal counsel, I did the lobbying for the General Assembly, for the administration in the General Assembly, along with a team of people, and then also had the opportunity to serve as cabinet secretary. I think because of that experience, someone from Blue Cross approached me and said, we are looking for a general counsel. There had been a CEO change there, and you should apply. Well, I said no twice. I'm not interested. I've never thought about that. I like what I'm doing, et cetera, et cetera. So then they mentioned that they were doing a national search. What does that look like? What does it mean? And that's probably something that would be helpful as I leave the governor's office at some point, because those jobs are transitory at the level that I had the opportunity to serve. So I'm going to go through that experience, and I'll learn something that will then position me when I get ready to leave. During the time I was going through that process, a law firm in D.C. learned that I might be thinking about leaving, and they expressed their interest. So I went through a track of interviewing with them, and literally, Carol and I were in what was called National Airport, then Reagan Airport, getting ready to fly home after having the final lunch with the partners, and I had a partnership agreement in my backpack. They had made me an offer for a job. I checked my voicemail at my home, and there was the head of HR from Blue Cross calling, saying, call us as soon as possible, I need to talk with you. And so we went from no opportunities to two amazing, life-changing opportunities. And I had a wonderful conversation with Governor Hunt. He said, I don't want you to leave, but you got to go. And gave the advice that while it's your decision, I hope you'll remain in North Carolina. So that was his thumb on the scale. So I made the choice to go to Blue Cross and never looked back and never regretted it, because it was a wonderful opportunity. I had the opportunity to work for the CEO who hired me, and then my predecessor we had a great partnership and relationship, and he was a good leader, dynamic leader as well. I learned so much from him because what did I know about healthcare? I knew what I knew, but I didn't know as much as I needed to know. So I had wonderful colleagues, and as I said, the last 22 years, that's where I was.
What was it like to lead such a large business?
So we had about 3.9 million customers at that time. When I first joined in '96 as general counsel, we were probably, I would say, around 2,400 employees. So the company had doubled in size over that period of growth. And we stayed at about that number the entire time I was CEO, 5,500, 5,000 employees, and the customer base. I'm the same person. The only thing that's happened is there's an announcement I got a different job. The people that I worked with every day, my colleagues on the executive leadership team, and we talked about this, and I said, you're treating me differently. But I think, you'd have to go interview a bunch of people to find out if my perception is right. I think for the most part, I continue to be the same person. And I do think, here's a leadership lesson that I've shared with people that invite me to come and talk to them about leadership. You have to be authentic and genuine. You can't fake it. You shouldn't fake it, and you can't. You may think you're really good at it, but you're not. If people know who you are already, and all of a sudden there's a sudden change, it doesn't, and it's artificial for you, they're going to see it. So just carry on, be authentic and genuine. When you have a problem, remember where we started this conversation? When you have a problem as the CEO, share it. Whether that problem is part of the company, a conversation about an issue or whatever it might be, or whether it's personal. You need to share it, I think, so people know where you are. And so our first grandchild was born when I was president CEO in 2015, you tell everybody. And you celebrate that with them. When your family is facing a pretty complicated and significant medical circumstance, you let them know because you need their support, and that's who you are. And by the way, something like either of those events may cause you to act differently for some reason. Could be, you're having a bad day, and people give you a break, and it felt that way to me.
What are some leadership techniques you would like to share with our audience?
I am a big proponent of writing notes. 3x5 card, not an email. That's okay. But the power of the pen and paper, it's different. And I really believe it's different today than it was 10 years ago because people don't do it anymore. That makes it even more unique and amazing, right? But he didn't say, now let me give you a lesson here. I just watched him do it, and I was a recipient of those notes forever. And it doesn't have to be some amazing epistle, but if I learned in the company, for example, that there was a death in their family. Now, I didn't know everything about everybody, but some of that would come to my attention. And I ask people to be intentional. Let me know if there's a birth, a death, an anniversary, a birthday, a child's graduation from whatever. And did I bat 1,000%? No, I did the best I could. But every day I would try to write somewhere between 2 to 5 notes to somebody somewhere. And as I was transitioning out and walking around, just saying hello and goodbye to people around and about the company, many of whose workspaces were in cubicles, right? But it was it was like their bulletin board. So there's the birthday celebration pictures. You can always see all the, what's important in their life. I was struck by how many people, some of those notes were 2 years old. Push pin, there's a note about whatever it was I was writing. It may have been a promotion. It may have been for a job well done. Somebody had customer service. A customer had said something. And that's when it really resonated with me, the power of the pen and paper. To say thank you for who you are and what you're doing, or congratulations. And so maybe that helped with it. I'm confident that it did. That's about culture. That's how I think. Vera Palumbo was our HR leader for the entire time I was CEO. And she was a great leader she is a great leader in her own regard. And I spent more time talking to her than about any other of my direct report colleagues, trying to build a culture that was supportive and nurturing and positive and personal and productive and caring and collaborative and creative. That's really important. If you get that right, everything else is easier.
How did you find a balance between your work life and your personal life?
It's very important that you take care of yourself. Now, did I become a gold medal athlete? Of course not. But I tried to be disciplined to make sure that I had time for me, to tend to that regularly. It's an appointment on my calendar. I'm leaving at 4 o'clock today, and because I know where I'm going to the gym. You're better equipped to operate at the highest level that the circumstances require that you do. When problems come, and they always do, or complex issues you're facing and you've got to navigate through, that's when you need a strong team around you. And not fall into the trap that you're the only one on the planet that can possibly figure out the answer to all of the questions or the question, because you're not. You have a certain role and responsibility. You have a job description, and that's your job, and you got to do that well. But you have to be inclusive to get all the information and inputs that you need. And where does that come from? It comes from your colleagues across the organization. And they too have dependencies that they need to rely on to do their job so they can help you do yours. And you need to understand that collective wisdom is better typically than individual wisdom. And then at the end of the day, you feel confident that you have all of the inputs that you need, upon which, if you do not come to a collective decision, which more often than not you do, and then it's your responsibility to say, this is where we're headed, now let's lock arms and go. I'll just close by, again, back where we started. Being self-aware such that you know your own strengths and weaknesses, and to the extent that you need to strengthen your weaknesses, you have a team or a process and the resources necessary to fill that gap that you have. At least that's what always has served me well. And yes, by the way, I do have, always had, still do, friends or colleagues where I could speak with one-on-one and say what I needed to say. I need your help.
How do you prioritize your mental health?
Everybody needs what I call their therapist, where you can, I invite people all the time, look, just give me a call. If you need to yell at somebody for 10 minutes, I'm willing to listen. Just to get it off your chest, to pound the table once in a while. I mean, we're all human here. Or if you need to have a cry, go ahead, That's okay too. So, yes, I across my whole career and life have had those kinds of resources. Close personal friends. Now, you don't break confidences, but just having a supportive family and friendships that you can lean into, that's important as well. I'm at a time in my life, in fact, recently, I don't mind sharing this, that in the last 2 years, I live in the zip code now where people are leaving, and I've lost two of my dearest friends for many, many, many years. Recognizing that that's part of life when it comes to your front door is something that you need to be aware of too and reflect on. But yeah, those resources have always been available to me, and I've been more lucky than good. They've always been present. I haven't had to struggle to find them wherever I've been in my career journey or life journey. And I don't know that I consciously knew that I was relying on people. I just did it because I was fortunate to have that kind of infrastructure.
What routines do you have that help you function at your best?
I've always been an active person. I think part of that was having been a reasonably good athlete from the time I was in the second grade. It just became part of my genetic makeup. And just understand, nobody's perfect. I do the best I can. Needs to be an intentional part of your daily existence, whatever that means. When I was making speeches as Blue Cross Blue Shield CEO to the Rotary clubs around North Carolina, I would always say, if we would all simply remember what we were taught in fourth grade health. I remember Mrs. Terrell at Grimes Elementary School in Lexington, North Carolina, the health book, that was a subject. And it's just fundamentals, right? Eat right, get plenty of sleep, drink water, exercise, don't smoke, and then do these things. If we would all remember that and do it, healthcare costs will come down dramatically. Self-care, very, very important.
How did you effectively transition out of your position at Blue Cross Blue Shield?
When I was CEO of Blue Cross, and I knew I was getting closer to the end of my career, I watched 4 or 5 colleagues that I knew. I watched them do it. And so I saw them have a successful career. I saw them make the announcement. And then I saw them have a life that built either right out of the gate or over a period of time shortly after they left their CEO role or their leadership role at a university or whatever it might be. And they had this portfolio of a career that looked really exciting and interesting. So I asked them, I said, what'd you think about? How did you know it was time? And I listened to their guidance. And it was wise. And I thought it was smart. And it fit for me. I always tell folks, look, anything I say, you got to try on for size. So whatever that advice it is that people may glean from this conversation, I'm just telling you what worked for me. So I thought about that. And I picked the ingredients that felt right for me, that felt was the right fit. And then I acted on that plan. Just to kind of finish the thought, when I walked out the door, one of the pieces of advice that I had been given, I exercised. And it was to not have anything to do for 4 to 6 months. Take time to unwind, to read the books that you haven't been able to read, to get up in the morning and take a walk if that's what you want to do, to learn what it's like to not get 300 emails a day and feel the compulsion to answer them. One of the best pieces of advice, and they all gave me that. That was a common theme across the 4 or 5 people that I watched do it well. Because they said, and they were dead bang right, you don't know how tightly you're wound. You think that you're at peace and your head's not spinning all the time. It is. You will not understand that until you take some time that you don't have anything to do except what you decide you're going to do that day or that hour. And don't say yes to anything that's going to come, because people are going to, as soon as the announcement goes out, they're going to call you and say, how about this, that, or the other? Say no or maybe, but not yes. Keep it on a list, and if they really want you, they'll wait on you. And I took that time, and it was amazing and remarkable. We took a trip, go do something we've never done, and we did that. We walked through the day rather than run through the day. And by that time, I was ready to begin to say yes to some of the maybes that I had either thought about and put on my own list or had come knocking, so to speak.
How did you enter the higher education field, especially at Wake Forest University?
They wanted me to start the fall of 18. My January 1 of 18 was my first official day of quote, retirement. And I said, no, let's wait. I got to wait a bit. So, but I did that. I did that for 3 years. It was a wonderful experience. I love being on a college campus. I love studying, or having something to do. I bounced between the law school and the graduate school, the business school, then interact with lots of bright young people, finding their way, and hopefully I had something to say that resonated with them. But again, I learned far more from them than I'm sure that I taught them. And now I do not have any academic engagements, but I do a little consulting. This is my standard. I'm as busy as I want to be. And if I get too busy, then I need to fire myself from something. So I do some consulting, advising companies, large and small, as is Carol. So we're in a good place. And we're still traveling.
Have your strategies changed from what they were previously?
I don't know that my strategy is any different today than it has been along the way. I just have more time to execute some of those things that I enjoy doing. So for example, let's just start with mental and physical health. I'm diligent about working out daily, doing something. I have a Peloton, got that during COVID, and so that keeps me going. Recently, probably in the last year, is meditation, just finding time to be still and quiet. I am a person of faith, which has always kept me grounded in many, many ways. And so that's always been present in my life. I continue to read a lot. Most of it's history, but sometimes it's more along what I will call leadership, or things in that realm that keeps me current. I'm a keen and active observer of politics and what's going on. I'm really learning a lot about AI right now. That's an incredible journey, and still kind of head spinning. Family has always been very important. In fact, Carol and I, this is our 50th wedding anniversary year. Add a couple of 3 years on top of that before we made it official, but that's a time to pause and celebrate, and we're doing that again through travel. We have 4 grandsons. The oldest just turned 11 yesterday, the youngest is 6, and so we're fortunate to be an active part of their lives. We're in the transportation business in large measure, so getting people to and from soccer practice and swimming lessons and all of that sort of thing is great. But when you don't have grandchildren, people who have grandchildren always tell you how wonderful it is, and they're right, but you don't really know how wonderful it is until you have them, and it keeps you grounded and focused on the future. So that's kind of what I do and what we do, and you roll all that into one. I'd like to say maybe a way to capture it a little more concisely. Someone asked me a question one time: what is it that you would want said about you when it's time for them to say something about you? And I would hope that I'll actually reference two things. One would be that he was someone who did, in fact, love mercy, do justice, and walk humbly with his God. You know, that 100 years from now won't matter how big your bank account was, what kind of car you drive, how big your house is, but that you made a difference in the life of a child. And whether it doesn't have to be child, I think that's really, really important. That's what that message says. But I would amend that by saying in the life of people. And children are people too. But I think it's really important to focus on that end of the life spectrum. But recognize when you have an opportunity to serve and be the first one to raise your hand and step out on it. Do what you can. And that keeps me grounded and motivated and excited about whatever